Hello there, Leo. I think you've been marketed all wrong. Now, somewhere along the way, people have reduced you to someone who just loves attention. But after studying leadership, sociology, human resources, human design, and astrology, I don't think you're after attention. I think you're after impact. Because getting attention, that's easy. You can do that in your sleep. It's your influence that changes people. And when I look at Leo through the lens of executive astrology, I don't see someone chasing the spotlight. I see someone learning what it means to carry it. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Astrology of Authority series. Here we explore leadership through the lens of executive astrology. At Satori Synergy, we look at leadership a little differently. Now, astrology helps us understand and clock the timing of our professional and our personal development. It highlights the themes that become louder during each season of our career cycle. Human design, on the other hand, helps us understand the mechanics of it all. It shows us where we're naturally designed to make decisions, contribute to teams, communicate with others, solve problems, and of course, lead. Now, together, they help us understand why certain opportunities or challenges and lessons continue to show up throughout our lives. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Erica. I'm a retired social worker, former C-suite executive, certified BG5 career analyst, and founder of Satori Synergy. I'm a person who knows people and how they behave in their home and work lives. I help professionals understand themselves so they can understand their assignment by combining sociology, leadership science, human design, and what I call executive astrology. That's the application of astrological archetypes to leadership, organizations, and human development. Now, whether you're leading a company or a department, a nonprofit, a family, or simply learning to lead yourself, my goal is to help you recognize your natural strengths so that you can work with yourself instead of constantly working against yourself. Live softer, work smarter instead of harder. So if that sounds like your kind of conversation, you're going to love it here. Subscribe so that you can find me when you have time to binge out. Now, one of my favorite things about studying astrology is recognizing that the zodiac isn't just 12 different personalities. It's actually a developmental journey. Each sign builds on the one before it. Aries teaches us how to begin. Taurus teaches us how to stabilize. Gemini teaches us how to learn, communicate, and exchange ideas. Cancer teaches us how to create emotional safety and belonging and to care for the people around us. Then we arrive here at Leo. Leo marks the beginning of what are often called the social signs of the zodiac. Now, up until now, we've primarily focused on developing ourselves. Leo shifts that question. Instead of asking, who am I? It begins asking, how do I influence other people? It's an entirely different level of development. Influence doesn't necessarily require a leadership title. It doesn't require a corner office, doesn't even require permission. Influence simply means that your thoughts, your behavior, your words, your example begin shaping the people around you. And that's why I think Leo has been misunderstood for a very long time. People often reduce Leo to wanting attention, but attention isn't really the point. Attention is simply the byproduct of influence, actually. When people begin listening to you, watching you, or following your example, visibility naturally increases. With that visibility comes responsibility. Now, whether you realize it or not, someone is learning from the way you handle success, failure, conflict, change, uncertainty. They're watching. That's leadership. And then when we overlay that on top of human design and Leo season, we see 6 leadership traits that have very little to do with ego, everything to do with influence. Today, we're exploring gates 56, 31, 33, 7, 4, and 29. Now, first, you'll need to know if you have these activations in your human design chart. So if you don't know or you need to see your chart, take a moment right now, go to my website, satorisynergy.com/chart, and grab your chart. That's too easy. You're going to then look for these numbers on either side of those 2 columns or at the bottom of the page. Again, these Leo gates are 56, 31, 33, 7, 4, and 29. You ready? Let's get into it. The first Leo leadership trait is gate 56. This is often called the storyteller or the wanderer. In human design, gate 56 gathers experience and transforms them into engaging narratives and lessons that help other people make sense of life. This stimulating energy is located in the throat center. Now, in BG5, this function is associated with expression, communication, and implementation. How our ideas ultimately make their way out into the world. This is energy that shares past experiences to captivate the collective. Now, this isn't storytelling simply for entertainment purposes. This storytelling helps people orient themselves. And if you know me, you know that one of my favorite words is orientation. One of the reasons I love creating these videos is because I'm not just teaching astrology or human design. I'm telling stories about leadership. I'm helping you recognize yourself, or maybe your coworkers, your manager, your spouse, your overall career journey inside of these patterns. That's gate 56 in action. It's here to connect the dots from different worlds and different generations and experiences from various industries in a relatable and often very entertaining way by translating them into relatable stories that people can understand, remember, and share. Now, from my business sociology perspective, organizations don't just run on policies. They run on stories. Every organization has them. The founder that started the company in the garage, how this team pulled together during COVID, how we almost lost our biggest client and what we learned from that. Those stories become culture. They're repeated during onboarding. They're shared at the retirement parties. They are referenced during difficult moments. Stories preserve identity. Policies tell people what to do. The stories remind them why they do it. Now, you can usually recognize this leadership trait by listening for phrases like, "Let me tell you what happened." Or, "This reminds me of a client I had once." "Oh, this is what we learned from that experience in the past." Or, "Listen, there's a story behind that." You notice how everyone naturally leans in. Stories invite people into the lesson instead of forcing them into the information only. If this leadership trait is underdeveloped, communication becomes distraction, though. We've all experienced this at work. The meeting that should have been an email, the coworker who talks for 30 minutes without making one single point, office gossip, rumors, embellishing the truth for dramatic flair, adding a little, razzle dazzle to your recollection. That's diversion. It's communication without a positive purpose. Now, as this energy matures, communication becomes captivating. People become absorbed in the stories. Sometimes those stories unite people. Sometimes they divide people. But stories are powerful because they bypass spreadsheets and go right straight to the emotion. That's intoxication at its highest expression. Storytelling becomes enrichment. Now, your experiences aren't just entertaining, They're educational, transformational, and meaningful. Great leaders understand something that data alone can never accomplish. People rarely remember the stats. They remember the stories. You can see how this energy plays out in real life through the public figures such as Wendy Williams, Kris Jenner, Whoopi Goldberg, Keke Palmer, Beyonce, Frank Ocean, and Jill Scott, who are all wonderful storytellers and have this activation in their chart. And if your birthday is on the cusp of Cancer and Leo, which is where gate 56 sits between the dates of about July 18th till about the 24th, talk your talk, because this energy is what you're designed to naturally lead with. You'll do well maybe in the entertainment industry or maybe in a large organization where you can support employee engagement and interaction. Now, the second Leo leadership trait is gate 31, often called the leader or the influencer. This energy is also found in the throat center. But unlike 56, which leads through stories, gate 31 leads through being the voice. Specifically, it speaks on behalf of the group. In human design and BG5, this gate carries the energy of elected leader. I love that language because it reminds us that true leadership isn't just seized. It has to be entrusted. This isn't the person who walks into the room announcing that they're in charge. It's the person who everyone else naturally looks towards and says, "Would you lead us?" That's the distinction that matters. That's the point here. Now, from a sociology perspective, authority has always depended on legitimacy. The most effective leaders aren't simply those with authority based on their position. They're the ones who people believe should be leading. And sometimes those are two different people. Every workplace has someone whose opinion carries more weight than what their title would suggest. People seek them out before major decisions. It's above their pay grade, but the team trusts their judgment and will defend them if they're not in the room. That's social legitimacy. That's gate 31, the influential leader, backed up by the people. So at work, you'll often hear this energy of a leader's presence when others say things like, "What do you think we should do?" Or, "Hey, can you speak for us during the meeting?" Or, "Would you come with me to ask my parents if I could go to the party? They'll probably listen to you." Remember that one from childhood? Notice what's happening. People are voluntarily placing someone in that leadership role. Leadership is being granted, not demanded. That's gate 31 energy. Now, if this energy is underdeveloped, the gene keys call this arrogance. That's leadership that assumes people should listen simply because of a title, because of experience, because of credentials, or maybe because I said so. We've all worked with someone like that. They confuse compliance with commitment. People may obey what they say, but they don't necessarily trust them. At its highest expression, this energy looks like humility. I think that's beautiful because the strongest leaders that I have met rarely spend time convincing people that they are leaders. They're too busy serving, listening, representing, creating clarity. Humility doesn't make you smaller. It makes other people feel seen. And ironically, that's what causes people to follow you more. You can see this leadership trait in the lives of people like Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Hillary Clinton, and Diana Ross, who all have this trait activated in their charts. Different industries, different personalities, but the same social signals. People willingly look to them for direction. Now, if your birthday falls between July 24th till about the 30th, this is the first leadership energy that you'll naturally express. People may find themselves asking you for your opinion long before you've officially stepped into any leadership role. Now, how many times have you been asked to run for a class president? Or how many times have you been asked to lead a committee when you weren't even thinking about it? Let me know in the comments. The third Leo leadership trait is gate 33, often called the gate of privacy or retreat. Okay, now hear me out. I know that doesn't exactly sound like leadership trait. I know when people think of leadership, they usually picture someone out in front, speaking and motivating and taking action. Gate 33 reminds us that leadership isn't only about knowing when to speak. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back. This energy is also located in the throat center, like trait 31 we just looked at. But that's logical sharing. This is abstract, emotional sharing. And unlike trait 56, the very first one we learned about today, which is also abstract, emotional sharing, like gate 33, but that shares stories and concepts freely from the mind, while gate 33 is much more selective. It knows that not every experience should be shared immediately because it speaks from the core, from the identity center. Some experiences need time. They need perspective. They need reflection before they become wisdom. This spotlight is not for entertainment purposes only. It's here to help everyone evolve. In human design, gate 33 carries the pressure to remember and reflect on past experiences before sharing them with others. In the business application, this energy is associated with being the witness, the professional who observes what happened, steps away from the noise, and then later returns with insight for the group, with news they can use. Now, clock the sequence here. Experience it first, then reflect on it. Third, wisdom comes in. Now, we live in a world that rewards immediate reactions. Gate 33 reminds us that some of our greatest contributions come after we've had time to process it. This is reflection, not reaction. Now, from a sociology perspective, every healthy organization needs institutional memory. Policies tell us what we're supposed to do. Institutional memory reminds us what actually happened. Think about that seasoned employee who's been there for 15, 20 years. The one who says, listen, we've tried this before. Or here's why that policy exists. They're not resisting change. They're protecting the organization from repeating unnecessary mistakes. I'm telling you, every community, every family, every company needs someone who remembers. Someone who has an account of the transactions so we can learn from our mistakes and the past experiences. You'll often hear this energy through phrases such as, I need some time to think about that. We should do an after action review. Or before we move forward, what did we learn from last time? Oh, I'm sure you heard someone say, well, history has a way of repeating itself. All of that is gate 33 talking. Now, when this trait is underdeveloped and immature, the Gene Keys describes this as forgetting. Now, not forgetting in the sense of memory loss, but forgetting in the sense of failing to learn. We've all seen organizations that make the same mistake every 3 years because nobody documented the lesson. New leadership comes in, that same initiative gets rebranded and relaunched, the same problem shows up, everyone acts surprised. That's organizational forgetting. The loss of historical data, and that's expensive, not just financially, emotionally too. As this energy matures, though, it becomes mindful. Mindfulness isn't simply being present. It's becoming intentional about what experiences deserve your attention and which lessons deserve to be preserved. This is where leaders begin asking better questions. What is this experience trying to teach us? Now, that's a completely different conversation. And ultimately, it leads to the highest expression of this energy, revelation. Now, I have this gate, and it has become especially meaningful to me because it's part of my own Saturn placement. In astrology, Saturn represents our greatest lessons and responsibilities and long term mastery. This is why I love synergizing astrology and human design, because human design directly points to what you are going to be tested on when Saturn returns to ask you, what have you learned every 30 years? So it's fitting that one of my biggest lessons has been learning not to rush to explain everything while I'm still living through it. Some lessons aren't ready to be taught until they've had time to cook and mature. Now, sometimes your assignment isn't to react, it's to reflect, then return with wisdom. Hush until you're healed. Now, outside of me, you may recognize this energy in people who write memoirs or produce documentaries, preserve history by listening and observing, digesting the lesson, and give feedback to you as a blessing. They mentor others later in life or become known for helping society simply remember who they are. Think about figures like Barack Obama, Bob Marley, Joni Mitchell, Snoop Dogg, or Adam Levine. They're not simply telling stories, they're preserving wisdom through their Gate 33 energy. And if your birthday falls approximately between July 30th to maybe like the 5th of August, this reflective leadership trait is the biggest way that your Leo influence shows up. People may naturally come to you, not because you react the fastest, but because you can help them make sense of what just happened. The fourth Leo leadership trait is Gate 7, often called the role of the self in interaction, or simply the alpha leader. Then, when I studied this trait through the lens of organization and leadership, what I see is someone who naturally helps groups find direction, not by controlling people, not by demanding obedience, but by continually asking, where are we trying to get to? That's a very different type of leadership. In human design, Gate 7 is located in the G center, the identity, love, and direction function. That location needs to be noted because this gate isn't trying to tell people what to do. It's helping people determine where they're headed together as a collective. Now, in business, this energy represents guidance and strategic direction. Think less, I'm the boss, and more, here's the direction I believe will serve us best. That's Gate 7. Now, from a sociology perspective, every group eventually develops a shared identity. Think about it. Families do it, friend groups do it, religions do it, companies do it. The question becomes, who helps define that identity? Who reminds everyone what we're trying to accomplish? Who keeps the people aligned when distractions start pulling up to the team from different directions? Gate 7. It functions almost like a organizational compass. Now, at work, you'll often hear this leadership trait through questions such as, so what's our end goal? Or does this align with our mission? Are we solving the right problem? Or just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. I want you to notice this isn't operational thinking, it's directional thinking. Now, immature or underdeveloped, the shadow of this energy is division. It looks like teams pulling in different directions. Different departments are competing instead of collaborating. Leaders are protecting their own agenda instead of serving the organization. Everyone is rowing, but not in the same direction. Division isn't always about conflict. Sometimes it's just a lack of shared direction. Now, as this trait develops, division grows up and gives way and becomes guidance. Now, guidance isn't about having all the answers all the time. It's about helping people stay oriented. At its highest expression, the Gene Keys calls this virtue. Now, that's a fascinating word because virtue isn't just about being a good person. It's about consistently acting in service of something larger than yourself. This leads with what's good for the group instead of what just works for me. Now, if you have both gate 7 and gate 31 that I covered earlier, you have the channel or the strength of being an alpha leader. And that's a very valuable trait, both in small teams and large organizations. But I want to distinguish gate 7 from gate 31 because I see them playing out very differently inside of organizations. Now, remember, gate 31 is the spokesperson, the elected voice of the people, if you will, the influencer. Meanwhile, gate 7 is the strategist, the navigator, the one who's making sure everyone is headed in the same direction. One speaks for the people, the other one helps determine where the people are going. Healthy organizations need both to be successful. You'll often recognize this energy in visionaries who continually bring people back to the purpose, and public figures such as Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, Arthur Ashe, Ruby Dee, and Tina Turner all have this activation in their chart. If you're the boss, you want this person with this energy as your chief of staff or maybe your chief strategy officer. Now, they may never become the public face of the company, but they quietly influence every major decision behind the scenes. They naturally know that you can have the most talented team in the world, but if they're heading in different directions, the team exhausts itself. A clear direction often creates more progress than simply working harder. Now, if your birthday falls approximately between August 5th to about the 11th, this may be one of the earliest leadership traits that you will naturally express. It's a major part of your leadership style. People don't come to you for your opinion. They come to you because they need perspective. The 5th Leo leadership trait is gate 4, often called the formalizer or the gate of answers. This energy is found in the Ajna Center, the mental awareness function in human design in BG5. Now, unlike the throat center we've been exploring throughout this episode, the Ajna isn't here to communicate or to take action. It's here to process information, to recognize patterns, just to make things make sense. That's it. That's his job. The mind is not here to make decisions for you. It's here for data analysis. There's a difference, but that's a whole other conversation. Nonetheless, gate 4 has a fascinating job. It looks at a problem and naturally begins asking, what could explain this? What's the pattern here? How do we solve it? It's part of your human computer, and it's constantly searching for logical answers. Now, in human design, gate 4 is part of the understanding circuit, which means its purpose isn't just to be right, its purpose is to improve understanding. In BG5, this energy contributes to practical solutions. It tests ideas, it asks questions, and it refines explanations over time. Now, one thing I appreciate about this gate is that it doesn't assume that the first answer is the best answer. I like that. It understands that good thinking explores possibilities. You test, you learn, you revise, and then you test again, like any good mad scientist experimenting in a lab would do. Now, from a sociology perspective, every society depends on shared explanations. Let's tap into Gates 4's energy right now. Think about it. Every policy, every law, every organizational process started because someone was trying to answer a question. Maybe like, how do we reduce turnover? How do we improve engagement? How do we increase safety? How do we serve our customers better? Organizations are constantly solving problems. Gate 4 loves being part of that process because it enjoys making confusing things easier to understand. Now, you'll often recognize this leadership trait through questions and phrases such as, I think I have it figured out. Or, what if we tried it this way? Or someone may say, well, here's my working theory. Or even, that doesn't make sense. There has to be a better explanation. Then notice something. This energy isn't arguing for the sake of arguing. It's searching for understanding. Now, underdeveloped and immature, this expression would be called intolerance. That's when we become attached to our own explanation and we stop being curious about everyone else's. We've all worked with that person. Before you've even finished your sentence, they've already decided that they know the answer. They don't ask questions, they just defend their conclusion. That's intolerance. Not necessarily intolerance of people, but intolerance of new information. As this leadership trait develops, though, intolerance grows into understanding. Now curiosity begins to replace certainty. Leaders start asking, well, help me understand your perspective. Or, okay, well, tell me how you arrived at that conclusion. Now, at its best, this energy is forgiveness. I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound like it has anything to do with forgiveness. But it does. It has everything to do with forgiveness. Because the more we understand, the less quickly we are to judge. Understanding creates compassion. It helps us recognize that people make decisions based on their information, experiences, and awareness that they have at the time. Now, that doesn't excuse harmful behavior or anything like that, but it explains it. An explanation creates a space for grace. Now, this leadership trait reminds me of something I see all the time when I'm working with organizations. The best leaders don't rush to solutions. They diagnose it first. And I love a good analysis. Whether I'm looking at a human design chart, whether I'm looking at an astrology chart, or assessing a whole organization's culture, I'm asking the same question. What's really happening here? Because I know that solving the wrong problem creates more problems. Gate 4 teaches us that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions until the right answer reveals itself. Now, this energy makes for great researchers, consultants, engineers and analysts, scientists, or even educators. Now, public figures like Abraham Lincoln, Quincy Jones, Dick Gregory, Jane Goodall, John Lewis, Ryan Coogler, and Anthony Bourdain all carry this trait and all have helped us understand old logic in a new way. They build frameworks that help us understand the world differently. And if your birthday falls approximately between August 11th till about maybe the 17th, this analytical leadership trait plays a major part in how your Leo influence expresses itself. People may naturally come to you when they're stuck because you have the gift for simplifying complexity. You know, I always say, clarity changes behavior. People don't consistently change because we tell them what to do. They change when something finally clicks and makes sense. That's the philosophical energy of gate 4. Now, the sixth and final Leo leadership trait is gate 29, often called the gate of commitment or dedication. Unlike the other leadership traits we've explored today, this one isn't located in the throat center or the mental awareness function. It's located down in the sacral center, the energy resource, the workforce and sustainable life force function. And I think that's fitting because ideas don't build organizations. Commitment does. You can have the greatest vision in the world, the best strategy, the clearest direction, the most inspiring story, but none of that matters if no one stays committed long enough to bring it to life. In human design, gate 29 carries the energy to say yes to an experience and then persevere through it, even when it becomes challenging. I have this gate activated, and I assure you that my yes is my yes and my no is a no. One thing that I think gets misunderstood about this gate is that commitment is not the same as obligation. This isn't about you saying yes to everything. Quite the opposite, actually. It's about saying yes to the right things, because every yes is also a no to something else. In business, this energy reminds us that sustainable success isn't built on constant hustle. It's built on sustained engagement with work that is truly worth your energy. Now, from a sociology perspective, commitment is one of the strongest predictors of whether individuals, teams, and organizations will succeed or not. Think about it. Every meaningful relationship, every degree, every business, every nonprofit, every career eventually reaches the point where the excitement wears off. The honeymoon is over. Reality enters the chat. And then one question remains. Will you stay? That's gate 29. Leadership or love isn't proven when everything is easy. It's proven when purpose outlasts discomfort. You can hear this leadership trait talking when people say things like, I'm all in, or let's see this through. Or maybe, I know it's hard, but we're not quitting. For me, I think I'll hear myself say, let's get into it. Then I'm like, oh, wow, okay, well, my body said yes to whatever invitation I received. Now, statistically, half of you watching are like me and have to check in with your emotional intelligence for the final approval because you have emotional inner authority that guides your final decisions and help you to align with your best interests. If that's you, always wait for that. It'll save you lots of energy, time, money, and other resources. The Gene Keys describes the shadow or undeveloped energy as half-heartedness. I simply call it being half-assed. Listen, I can't handle no type of half-ass effort. Anything less than a hell yes is a no. Half-heartedness doesn't always look like quitting, though. Sometimes it looks like showing up physically, but checking out mentally. Doing just enough to get by, keeping one foot in and one foot out. Your body's here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town. Y'all know that song? You're waiting to see how things go before you fully invest yourself. We've all been there. We've all worked with people like that, or maybe we've been that person. As this leadership trait develops and matures, half-heartedness becomes commitment. And people know that they can count on you. You become someone who follows through. Not because you're perfect, not because you're obligated, but because you're dependable. And let me tell you, dependability is one of the most underrated leadership qualities in the workplace. People don't just trust your talent, they trust your consistency. Now, at its highest expression, this energy shows up as devotion. Devotion isn't about working harder. It's about caring deeply. You stop asking like, how little can I do? and you start asking, how can I fully serve this assignment or fully be in the experience of this partnership or role? Now, this trait reminds me of something I tell my clients all the time. Alignment is what makes commitment sustainable. Anybody can force themselves to do something for a little while, but when your work is aligned with your natural gifts and your values and your assignment, persistence feels different. It doesn't mean the work is easy. It means the work is meaningful. People often think successful leaders have more discipline. I mean, sometimes, but sometimes they simply have more alignment. And alignment looks effortless and easy and natural. That's how you know. Now, you can recognize this leadership trait in people who devote years, even decades, to a career, an experience, a passion project, or relationship. Think of Barbara Walters, Huey Newton, Celine Dion, Joe Biden, Cat Williams, Oprah, and Brene Brown. All have this energy in their charts. And if your birthday falls between maybe August 17th to maybe out to the 23rd, this is one of the first leadership traits that people experience from you. Your influence isn't just found in what you start, it's found in your commitment to the process without a need to know exactly how it will end. So there you have it. We did it. So before we wrap up, let's quickly recap the 6 Leo leadership traits and what they look like in real life. Trait 56, the storyteller. Great leaders create meaning through stories. Whether it's the mentor sharing a career lesson, or the founder telling about the company's origin, or the grandmother keeping the family history alive. Stories preserve culture and inspire people to keep going. Trait 31, the leader. Influence is earned, not assigned. This is the trusted coworker everyone asks before making a big decision. The community leader that people naturally rally behind, or the colleague who was asked to speak on behalf of the team because people trust their voice. Trait 33, the reflector. Wisdom shines bright from reflection, not just experience. This is the seasoned employee who remembers why a policy exists, the veteran mentoring the next generation, or the leader who pauses after every project to ask, okay, what did we learn? Trait 7, the alpha. Great leaders help people move in the same direction. This is the strategist who keeps the mission in focus, the project manager who aligns everyone's effort, or the parent reminding the family what really matters when life gets chaotic. Trait 4, the philosopher. This is about clarity and how it changes behavior. This is the consultant diagnosing the root problem instead of just treating the symptoms. The teacher making a difficult concept finally click, or that analyst whose thoughtful questions lead the team to a better solution. Trait 29 is about dedication. Leadership isn't just measured by what you start, it's measured by what you stay committed to. This is that entrepreneur who keeps building after setbacks, the volunteer faithfully serving year after year, or that healthcare worker, educator, or military member, caregiver who continue showing up because they're devoted themselves to something bigger than themselves. Together, these 6 traits paint a very different picture of Leo than the stereotypes we've all heard. Leo isn't simply a sign that wants to be seen. It's the sign that teaches us how to become someone worth following. So, next month, we'll leave the spotlight of Leo and step into the workshop of Virgo. Because once the vision has inspired people, somebody has to build the systems. Someone has to improve the process. Someone has to organize that work. And that's exactly what Virgo does. I'll leave it here for now, but I do want you to remember that once you understand yourself, you can understand your assignment. I'm ready to reintroduce you to yourself when you're ready to look at your compass and begin to align with your journey. Until next time, go be great, superstar.